Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'm unable to use my own voice at the moment, so for now I'll be narrating with a premium AI voice. I appreciate your understanding and support. Chapter 401, Gloves Are Off, Part 2. The stasis field surrounding the Distar household kept Frost Soul out, allowing everyone inside the mansion's walls to use magic freely. That and the hidden warp gate of the Distar household, bringing Ains and the professors of the Black Griffin to Darius the moment the alarm resounded, provided the city with reinforcements and medical supplies. Wounded soldiers and helpless mages entered the Distar household and left it with their bodies healed, a small arsenal of alchemical tools, and with several spells at their fingertips. We can drive the Oopers back, but how many innocents will die before the battle is over? Brynja looked at the pillars of smoke rising from all over Darius. What about next time? What if Meln sends hundreds of Oopers instead of a few dozen? Distar Marquisate, Lustria County, City of Lutia. Hundreds of Oopers attacked Orpal's birthplace, and the horseman led the charge. He saw how much Lutia had grown in his absence and knew that it had happened not because of him, but in spite of him. I ruined Leech's reputation and showed these worms my true power back when I exposed his dirty little secrets at the Heavenly Wolf restaurant. Yet these ungrateful bastards still crawl at Leech's feet. They even worship him like a god. The sight of the temple of the All-Father enraged Orpal most of all. The giant statues of Lith's known four forms seemed to mock him, their sheen surface a testament to the devotion that the people paid to him without even being asked. That should be my temple. Those statues should depict me. The thought that none of his followers showed him a fraction of the admiration the Lucians had for Lith almost drove Orpal mad with fury. The almost disappeared when he noticed Tryon's majestic statue. The sculptures of the four generals were smaller than the All-Fathers, but still carved from polished stones and depicted with a heroic bearing. "Where is your god now, you pathetic maggots?" Orpal screamed in outrage as he smashed the statues with a colossal spear comprised of several black prisms. "Where is Leech? He's far away and uncaring like all the so-called gods. I'm here instead, and you will all kneel before me." After he was done with the statues, Orpal lunged at the temple. The prism's coating thorn amplified the destructive power of the spear, raising the temple of the All-Father to the ground in a matter of seconds. "Kill them all!" the Verdalak roared. "Destroy everything, starting with the blacksmith's house. Bring me Zekel Prudhammer's head on a pike. Lith, where in the gods' names are you?" Zekel pressed the contact rune like a madman, but a thick layer of hoarfrost covered his contact amulet, jamming it. "Surma, we need to—" One Oopir stomped on the blacksmith's house from the front and another from the back, flattening it. "What about the old man's head?" a trained Oopir asked. "Didn't we just squash it?" "We would have done it anyway," a Naga Oopir replied. "Look." He tried lifting a corpse from the middle of the street, but it was crushed under the pressure of his massive fingers. "Just bring the dead king the head of an old man. It's not like he will notice the difference." Lutia had no walls and was only guarded by a small contingent of the army. Most mages of the local branch of the association were low-level clerks, tasked with distributing the tablets and keeping records of the trial run. Once Frost Soul sealed the warp gate, the association didn't stand a chance and lasted only for a few seconds after the attack began. Orpal had struck the Distar region first, preferring to alert the rest of the kingdom rather than risking the royals might send someone capable of spoiling his plans to Lutia. "Gods, I'm an idiot," the dead king thought when he returned to his senses. "I've wasted too much time crushing an insignificant pile of stones. What if my real target has already escaped?" Due to Frost Soul surrounding Lutia, Orpal couldn't use life vision, moonlight, or life-sensing arrays, leaving him only his regular sight to look for his prey. "Stay on guard. I'm sure that Leech has prepared something. Do not approach his house. That's an order." The dead king's words would have confused the Lucians, if only they could stop for a moment and listen to him. The Lucians were too busy running for their lives to care about what Orpal did or said. Otherwise, they would have questioned why he had started the attack from the city, and no Oopir had been sent past its borders. Crazy bastard. Yorl was one of the few who knew the answer to such questions. But a crazy bastard with a good plan? I can't believe he came up with it on his own. I must say, I'm enjoying this much more than I should. Knight hadn't stopped laughing since the moment the attack on the Blood Desert had started. It's been too long since the last time I had so much fun. In the eternal boredom of my existence, watching the weak squirm under my foot is the only pleasure that never gets old. The face of every one of these humans twists in fear and despair in a unique way. They are akin to snowflakes in a storm, so pretty, yet so ephemeral. And the best has yet to come. Orpal left the ruins of the temple, reaching the farmlands with a single flap of his wings. The 3 squads of the Queen's corpse that protected Lutia, even in Lith's absence, were too busy saving people to try and stop him. Without their magic and reinforcements, they were just 15 well-armed and trained soldiers against living gods. The kings of the Tron Woods and their magical beast subjects prepared for the worst, ready to attack from under the cover of the arrays shrouding Lith's home. Much to their surprise, the Verdalok gave the Verhen household a wide berth and shrank to the size of a tall human. Orpal had come to take his revenge on Lutia, but there were people who mattered to him much more than a bunch of buildings and strangers. He landed in front of Broman's house like a meteor, opening a crater in the ground and producing a shockwave strong enough to shatter the glass windows. "I've never forgotten about you, Rizal." Orpal's fanged mouth curled up in a disgusted grimace at the sight of the simple yet comfortable stone cottage. "How could I? You're the first person to have ever betrayed me." He kicked the door open, sending it flying off its hinges and crashing against the wall. The Verdalok clicked his tongue, disappointed that no one had gotten hurt. "It's because of you that my parents disowned me." Orpal walked through the door slowly, savoring the fear he could smell on Rizal, Broman, and Lisa. "You claim to be my friend, yet you didn't hesitate 1 second to rat me out to save your sorry ass after you failed your simple assignment. If 16 years ago you just followed my instructions and limited yourself and your stupid friends to teach Leech a lesson, none of this would have happened." Chapter 42, Snake in the Grass, Part 1. Instead, you flew off the handle and beat him an inch from his life. You were the one who messed everything up, yet I was punished for it. Orpal snarled in outrage. "When I was sentenced to exile, I could have Tryon with me if you didn't waggle your tail at Leech like the filthy dog you are. You destroyed my life and took my brother away from me, yet you got rewarded for it." Orpal swung Thorn around, the Davros spear swishing with enough strength to generate air blades that shredded wood and stone alike into splinters. "That wasn't fair, Rizal." Orpal shook his head. "It wasn't right. We committed the same crime and should have received the same punishment. Should we not?" A lunge of Thorn hit Broman square in the chest. The kinetic energy alone turned the man into gore before Rizal could muster the courage to reply. "There, I lost my father, and so did you," Orpal said with a sing-song voice. "Now, before I move on to dear Lisa here, I need to know where your little brother Luca is. Believe me, I searched far and wide for him, but the kingdom is big, and looking for the mere son of a farmer is like trying to smell a fart in a storm." "Dad!" Rizal cried. Tears of pain and fury streaked down his face. "Yes, I killed your dad. I think we established that already." A swing of Thorn and Lisa's left arm flew away with a spurt of blood. "Now focus. I can kill your mother, or I can butcher her. She's going to die anyway, but how much she has to endure is up to you." "Mom!" Rizal tore his shirt and used what he had learned in the army to twist it into a makeshift tourniquet. "If you keep up like this, it will take us all day," Orpal sighed, amputating Lisa's right foot next. "Man, not making her die of shock is harder than I thought. I wish I could heal her, but I'm not wasting mana on a dead woman." Lisa fainted after the second swing, her face becoming paler and paler as her blood formed a deep, warm pool on the floor. "Why are you doing this?" Rizal wanted to kill Orpal, but he knew he was too weak. Rizal wanted to cry for his father's death, but he already had little chance of saving his mother while keeping his cool. If he broke down, he would have none. "To make you understand how I felt all these years," Orpal replied, his voice full of hate. "Hopeless, alone, dead to my family. The only difference between us is that your family is literally dead." He watched Rizal struggle to save Lisa and laughed for it. The blood loss was stopping, but not thanks to Rizal's medical skills. "If you hate me so much, why don't you just kill me?" "Because I want you to suffer as much as I did," Orpal said. "I want you to live a miserable life just like I did, knowing that it's all your fault. Know that I didn't attack Lutia to go after Leech, not this time. I came for you. And that old fossil of our village elder, Pernat. He's already dead, which makes this all about you. Once the people of Lutia know that you are the reason so many of them died, they'll banish you. Do you understand? A colossal snake head burst through the wall, covering Orpal in dust and debris. Knowing that despite his current appearance, Orpal was a divine beast, the serpentine neck curled around the two humans and brought them to safety, while the other 6 heads spat rivers of acid at him. How dares a mere hydra defy me? Orpal repelled the corrosive liquid with a simple flap of his membranous wings. Mostly like this, a feminine voice said, accompanied by 7 tier 5 spirit spells that hit the Verdalak one after another, blasting him far away from the dissolving remains of Rizel's house. Also, not a hydra. Dozens of stumpy but sturdy bodies covered in adamant emerged from the Tron woods, each with 7 heads and engulfed in a bright violet aura. A lot of them. Faluel hissed while using her breathing technique, Lifestream, to save Lisa's life. Sending a couple of goons to dimensionally seal my lair would have been a good move, if Knight hadn't used that same trick against me in the past, Poopy. The moment you cut the signal, alarms went off in the houses of my friends and gave them time to arrange transportation for everyone in Lutia. I'm Lith's former mentor and the ruler of Distar, and I won't stand you messing up with my turf. Orpal didn't even try to activate Frost Soul. Each of Faluel's spells was strong enough to blow him away, and the 7 she had just conjured formed a perfect chain, the next striking right before the momentum of the previous started to weaken. The Hydra's opening move had pushed the Verdalak so far back that she was already outside the area of effect of his bloodline abilities. At that moment, Frost Soul would solely affect Orpal's spells and equipment, while the Hydras would be free to do however they wanted. Which will make killing you an even greater pleasure, filthy snake. Orpal released a bolt of life maelstrom from Dusk's crystal that increased his abilities tenfold. You may have brought a few friends with you, but I have over 100 loyal divine beasts with me. The only thing your selfless sacrifice will achieve is give me plenty of awakened lairs to plunder. Who did you call a snake? 7 silvery feminine voices roared. The voices resembled Faluel's, but they were also more ancient and ferocious. A bigger Hydra, 23 meters, 76, tall, and covered in a heavy suit of armor, charged at the Verdalak with the speed of a train. You and everyone like you, Snake. Orpal kept his human form and raised his spear, ready to impale the enemy with his superior mass and strength. There is no place for imperfect beings like you in my wheat. A sudden bolt of silver lightning enveloped the sprinting Hydra, bringing her physical prowess and reflexes on par with the dead king. She closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye and lashed one of her long necks at Orpal like a metal whip. Not only was Thorn effortlessly pushed aside, leaving him completely open, but the spear and the serpentine head clanged with the unmistakable sound of clashing Davros. You? Orpal finally recognized the Elder Hydra as Fearwall, one of the 4 founding pillars of the kingdom, owner of a royal fortress armor and mother of Faluel. Me, you sick bastard! The other 6 heads struck at the Verdalak in quick succession like a jackhammer. No one attacks my baby girl! Orpal was sent flying high in the sky, spinning like a top. He flapped his wings to stop his ascent before he left Lutia and was met with 7 tier 5 spirit spells that hit him with the same rhythm as the heads. Before we head to the next chapter, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the stories coming. Chapter 4 Year 3. Snake in the Grass, Part 2. Fuck! He activated Doomtide to absorb the surrounding world energy and released it in a massive dome that hit the spells, forcing them to unleash their destructive power while far away from him. The conflagration pushed the Verdalak further back and blinded his and Knight's mystical senses. This is a blessing in disguise. If we kill Fearwall, we'll have the Davros armor you need. Its enchantments may not suit you, but beggars can't be choosers. Knight said, I'll use the Royal Fortress armor as a Verdalak, and the Black Rose armor as a human. Orpal replied, calling upon his steed to prepare to defend against the attack he knew was about to come. I can use both, except he was wrong. No one followed him, and no attack came. Follow the Hydras! Reaper, the king in the south of the Tron woods, led the charge of the Shifes. Don't stand in their way, rescue the humans, and don't engage in combat unless absolutely necessary. This isn't a fight we can win. What he said, Lifebringer, the king in the south, brought his guy lads with him. As for the Hydras, they singled out the Upers still at the Deep Violet who had no mass advantage over them and attacked them mercilessly. Divine beasts with a violet core or above were too dangerous, and the hydras targeted them from a distance with spells. "Do not break ranks!" Yorl the Storm Griffin yelled, before panic spread the Ooper's formation too wide. "We have the advantage of numbers and mass. Form squads of 5 and bring the fight to the enemy." "Excellent idea." Oofel the seven-headed dragon dived from the sky, hurling 7 rivers of origin flames at the flabbergasted Oopers and unleashing as many spells. The mystical fire weakened the magical defenses they had conjured, and the spells blew them up along with flesh, bones, and wood. 3 uppers died on the spot, and the other 4 survived only because the attack had missed their route. A worthy opponent. The griffin and the dragon squared off, separated only by 2 city blocks. "You are a bit bigger than me, but I'm eager to see how good a fighter a dragon is, especially one with life maelstrom." Oofil had reached the bright violet core, and Fearwall had infused him with silver lightning before the fight. He was the only divine beast among the hydras and their second-best trump card after her. The armor that Thrud had forge-mastered for him fit like a glove and was made of pure adamant, just like his Estoc. Yorl had only recently broken through to the violet, but between his griffin strength and thunder soul, he was confident in his victory. "It's a tough matchup for me." Oofel smirked, his 7 heads whipping through the air and forcing Yorl to split his focus between them. "If I kept this a fair fight, that is." A silver-streaked purple bolt of lightning dived down from the sky and punched at Yorl's head. The storm griffin managed to raise his arms in time to take the brunt of the blow, but it still bent the adamant of his armor and hit his face like a hammer. Oofel didn't miss the opening and leapt at the still-dazed Yorl with his 7-fanged maws open. The storm griffin took a step back and conjured a spirit barrier to buy himself the few seconds he needed to clear his blurred vision. Unfortunately for him, a whipping purple tail shattered the barrier while it was still forming and left Yorl open to Oofel's attack. "We could have killed him if we stopped for a few seconds, you know that, right?" Ra'agu Drarion, human representative of the council, said via a mind link. "I do, but what's the point?" Fila, the behemoth, the beast representative replied. "It's just 1 oop here, and we are currently outnumbered and outmatched. The moment the Dead King's soldiers recover from our surprise attack and regroup, they will slaughter us. We need to even the field and kill them if we want to get a shot at taking out Narchat once and for all." "I know," Ra'agu sighed. "Gods, I can't believe so many fools took the offer of that bastard and became divine beasts. I can't believe how easy it was for him to create so many fake divine beasts instead." Fila bolted towards the Lutean branch of the Mage Association, striking down all the Oopers she found on her path, but never stopping long enough to deal more than a single blow. She too had received a bolt of life maelstrom from Fearwall, and with her griffin strength and martial prowess, she was just a bit short of a true divine beast. Gods, if only this weren't Verhen's turf, and I didn't have to keep casualties to a minimum. Fila looked at the screaming and crying humans, wondering if among them there was someone Lith loved and cared for. She landed near the 4 Oopers besieging the association, instead of on top of one of them, not to raise the city block to the ground and kill everyone still there. The corrupted divine beasts were taller and bigger than her, but she had life maelstrom and 6 centuries of battle experience. Her right battle claw connected with a still-shocked Oopir's chest and punched out of his back. It wasn't enough to kill a Treant hybrid, but she had no need to. Her Tier 5 spirit spell, Blast Wave, spread along the damaged vines and vessels, blowing him apart from the inside. A front kick drove the talons of her right foot past the armor of a Sphinx Oopir hybrid and delivered a Tier 5 spell straight into her heart. By the time the 2 remaining Oopirs turned to face Fila, the Sphinx was already dead. They each unleashed their best Tier 5 spirit spells, but Fila swatted them away with a flap of her wings that were shrouded in a thick spirit barrier. A lightning-quick straight struck a Garmer Oopir in the jaw, forcing her mouth open and delivering a roaring sphere of emerald fire down her throat. The remaining redcap Oopir took 1 step away from the purple whirlwind of death, and the behemoth took 1 step forward. A barrage of fists struck the Fae from midriff to chest, each one releasing a monostorm bullet on impact. The combined shockwaves produced by the adamant battle claws and the spirit spell ripped the brambles that comprised the recap's body to shreds and exposed her root. Fila smashed it with her next punch, putting an end to the fight. 4 Upers had died in less than 4 seconds, making those staring at the behemoth tremble in fear. Fila's bloodline carried all of Tyra's strength, but none of her bloodline abilities. It was the reason behemoths had perfected what they like to call fist magic over the millennia. It was no real branch of magic, and the first time it had been revealed, fist magic had been regarded with scorn and hilarity. After all, it simply required casting spells with one's body and delivering them at the moment a physical blow landed. 2 things that any awakened who had achieved the deep violet core could do. Chapter 4U24. 5 minutes, Part 1. Yet only behemoths had the strength to break past an enemy's guard even with a casual strike and the discipline to practice releasing their spella, not before the hit landed or after the enemy had started recoiling, but in the fleeting moment between successful attack and reaction. It's my turn now. Cover my back. Ra-Gu had 5 concentric rings of light shining on her arms and 3 more on her back. Each ring was a powerful magical formation that she had cast, conjured, and kept at the ready with no burden for her focus. The human representative's secret technique allowed her to have multiple arrays and a full mana core at her disposal. She had already used Invigoration before the battle started and cast more arrays as soon as she consumed those she had prepared. A sealed space array enveloped the branch of the Mage Association, driving away the effects of Frost Soul, but also its connection with the world energy. Ra-Gu shaped the sealed space in a pillar, tall enough to escape the area of effect of the Uper's bloodline ability. Then, she used a second array to form a powerful spirit barrier to protect the fragile dimensional seal, and opened a spirit warp steps right on top of it. Unspoiled world energy flooded the sealed space, diluting what was left of the Frost Soul until elemental magic worked again. The warp gate of the association thawed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its runes charged up. The request for reinforcements finally reached the city of Valero, and the dimensional tunnel opened. "Bring those arrays down now," Acton the Bastet said as he led his squad against the 2 council representatives. Ra-Gu, Fila could dodge almost every weapon and most spells with ease, but the magical formations couldn't move, and there were only so many attacks the behemoth could intercept. "I'm on it. Don't worry and just buy me some time." New circles of light replaced those she had just consumed. "Have faith in the council." "About that, where is Inxialot?" Fila asked. Thousands of kilometers away, in the Keller region, the undead representative had already forgotten about the emergency call. "Sure thing, Sugarlips. I'll be there in 5 minutes." He had said to Ra-Gu, and right there and then, he meant it. "Just the time to put my ongoing experiment in stasis." Inxialot had even taken a note to ensure he wouldn't forget about his fight date. Alas, once he was done with his battle preparations, he had no memory of what he had prepared for. "Thank the gods I take notes for everything." And indeed he had. The note read, "Only 5 more minutes. Do not delay 1 second longer." The King of Liches furrowed what was left of his rotten brow, trying to decipher the cryptic message he had left to himself. "A training drill?" he pondered out loud. "Or maybe my experiments needed 5 minutes of stasis sharp to stabilize. That's why I set the chronometer." At the 5-minute mark, Inxialot undid the stasis arrays and discovered that indeed the volatile energies he had conjured had assumed a stable form and were ready to be employed for the next stage of his research. Wonderful! He was as full of enthusiasm as a child opening his birthday gifts. "I'm really a genius. Too bad I didn't write down how I calculated the necessary stasis time. 5 minutes is a weirdly precise number." Not to miss anything else, Inxialot wrote everything about his latest discovery down to the smallest detail and resumed his work. That day turned out great for the King of Leeches. For the kingdom, however, not so much. Meanwhile, in the skies of Lutia, Orpal was done being ignored. "I didn't expect the council to intervene so quickly, but no matter. I still hold the advantage." He spun Thorn over his head, conjuring his Blade Tear spell and unleashing a volley of wailing wind. The darkness element that was overabundant during the night flooded the crystal in his chest and moved into the Davros spear that amplified every spark of mana Orpal injected into it. The souls of Night's victims seemed to take form from the crackling energy that swirled around Thorn's blade, weeping for their fate. Each lunge of the spear conjured strings of runes in the air and generated several pillars of darkness that rained down on the Hydras like divine retribution. One wailing wind wasn't enough to kill an adult lesser divine beast armored in adamant, but it struck them down, leaving them helpless against the Oopers with whom they were fighting to the death. "You can run, little snakes, but you can't hide!" Thorns shone brighter and brighter as Shattered Moon reached completion, forming a sphere of silvery light so bright that a second full moon seemed to have risen in the night sky. Orpal had no qualms about harming helpless humans and aimed the wailing winds so that whenever a Hydra dodged his attack, it would still hit a building. Meanwhile, Ufel tussled with Jorel on the ground in a constant battle of claws against talons and spells against spells. The Storm Griffin had a weaker core but a stronger body, and Thunder Soul made every one of his attacks deadly. To make matters worse, Jorel was a light master and moved the constructs that he had conjured before the battle like extensions of his being. They turned into muzzles that clamped Ufel's mouths down before he could bite, shields that deflected his acidic spit, or blades ready to lunge at the joints of his armor. Despite that, the seven-headed dragon held his ground and played to his advantages. The equipment the Mad Queen had gifted him was much better than what Orpal's Forge Masters had crafted for Jorel, and his seven heads allowed Ufel to anticipate and counter the Griffin's every move. More importantly, the seven-headed dragon had received Thrud's personal training and sparred countless times against his fellow generals. Ufel was used to fight against griffins and all sorts of unknown divine beasts, whereas Jorel had never met a seven-headed dragon before. "You are a good fighter, kid." Jorel spat out a mouthful of blood, feeling his light fusion barely keeping up with Ufel's venom that dripped from the griffin's still open wounds. "Loyal, motivated, and feral. I respect that. You instead are a piece of shit." Ufel's seven mouths panted heavily, trying to catch their breath. "You didn't even try to avoid killing those people." He looked at the devastation surrounding them, filled with deep craters that reeked of burned meat. "And you didn't even try to stop me." Jorel licked the jagged edges of his Ooper beak, thirsty for the dragon's blood. "That's on you, kid. Just like this." The Storm Griffin coalesced his construct into a highly compressed heat ray that he shot at an unaware Hydra who had her back turned on him. At the same time, he dug his talons deep into the ground and sprinted forward. Ufel hesitated for a split second, torn between the urge to warn Zesha and defend himself. Half of his heads calculated her odds of survival once the Oopir she was fighting against gained the upper hand, while the other half focused on Jorel. Chapter 4 Year 25 5 Minutes, Part 2. That split second of hesitation was enough for the Storm Griffin to reach Ufel and punch the dragon with all his strength. The seven-headed dragon blocked, but Thunder Soul shattered his arms and then carried the blow right to his chest. Ufel's knees gave out and he coughed up blood from his seven mouths. The second punch cracked one of his heads, and its corresponding neck went limp. The remaining jolt of Thunder Soul reached Ufel's heart, sending his body into a seizure. The third punch would have caved Ufel's chest and punctured his lungs, if not for a river of emerald energy hitting Jorel like a maglev train, before wrapping itself around Ufel and carrying him outside Frost Soul's area of effect. "Breathe, kid, breathe!" Ajatar the Drake used his spirit fusion to bolt inside and outside the battlefield to rescue the wounded before it was too late. "Thanks for the advice, Lizard." Jorel had followed Ajatar to kill two enemies with one blow and recover his dwindling strength. "Too bad you didn't have Life Maelstrom or—" A massive punch as black as the night itself cut the Storm Griffin short and sent him crashing against Orpal, shooting the dead king out of the sky. "He doesn't need it, boy." Zorith the Shadow Dragon roared her challenge, drawing all eyes on her. "I have more than enough Life Maelstrom for the both of us." Nalia's silver lightning crackled from one of Zorith's scales to another like angry snakes of light. Unlike the other Eldritch hybrids, the Shadow Dragon had no need to delay her intervention. Her friendly relationship with Lith was no secret, allowing her to rush to Lutia at dragon speed the moment the royals had lost contact with the local branch of the association. Zorith had come to the fight prepared, wearing her full battle equipment, amassing every extra drop of elemental power she could in her limbs, and surrounding herself with a thick layer of world energy conjured by the elemental crystals studded on her battle claw, Skypiercer. The plan, or rather, her hope, was to delay Frost Soul long enough to draw a full breath of Origin Flames and conjure at least one spell tailored to the crisis at hand. The Shadow Dragon knew the Ooper's bloodline abilities and how they worked, but had no idea who she would face in battle aside from Orpal himself. Different bloodline abilities required different spells, and strategies suited to fighting in the sky would cause massive casualties when employed in the middle of a populous city like Lutia. Much to her surprise, the hands-like effect of Sky Piercer synergized with her elemental limbs, creating a stable layer of world energy around her that kept the corrupted life force of Frost Soul away. I don't know what's happening, but I can feel the water element stored in my wing dripping away, she thought, unaware that activating swirling wind would have further stabilized the world energy. I'm on a clock, so I must make every second count. The shadow dragon rushed at the dead king, who promptly intercepted her with a volley of wailing winds. Life Maelstrom amplified Orpal's abilities tenfold as well, but he imbued another extra jolt into Thorn just to be safe. Xenogrosh tried to dodge the roaring pillars of darkness, but they relentlessly chased her with a speed superior to her own. Maybe whatever effect is protecting me also applies to my dimensional magic. Here goes nothing. She tried to blink, but due to her lack of life vision, she aimed her exit point in an area affected by the frost soul of a passing Upyr. The dimensional passage froze without opening, and so did its twin, leaving the shadow dragon exposed to the volley of wailing winds but far from defenseless. She conjured the Tier 5 Chaos spell, Hollow Mist, wrapping herself in a sphere that destroyed everything that touched. Chaos and darkness magic battled for supremacy, and even though Xenogrosh still had the upper hand, the conflicting energies blinded her completely. She stopped her charge, afraid to crash into an ally and kill them. When the hail of spells ended and the shadow dragon could afford the risk to lower Hollow Mist, Orpal was long gone. Yorl, however, was not. The Storm Griffin had used the respite to regain his strength with invigoration and repair his hard light constructs. He came at Zorith with his twin maces, Dusk Wraith, aiming for her neck and head. There's no time to dodge, and if I block, Sky Piercer's claws would shatter and fall in the frost soul below. At that point, the self-repair enchantment wouldn't activate, and I would be disarmed until the end of the fight. She thought. The shadow dragon's hands closed into fists, and the Yggdrasil wood of Sky Piercer rearranged itself into thick combat gloves, sacrificing range for durability. A couple of quick jabs intercepted Duskwraith without suffering more than 2 small dents in the wood that started to repair immediately. The Storm Griffin, instead, was knocked back by the impact. Griffins were the mightiest among divine beasts, and Zorith's cloaking rings hid her strength. Joral's plan to quickly overpower her had failed, and he had no idea why. He needed time to formulate a new strategy, but the Shadow Dragon gave him none. Yoral barely managed to stop the flurry of armored fists, the whipping tail, and the snapping maw that came for his vitals. How in my mother's name is this possible? He thought as the Shadow Dragon effortlessly blocked his counteroffensive. Yoral was older than Xenogrosh, but their battle experience was nowhere near similar. He had been raised and trained by griffins, whereas she had only recently regained her dragon form. He had spent centuries honing his skills in search of the secret of the Violet Core, while she had relied on her eldritch powers for fighting since chaos would destroy her equipment. Yet Zorith's open palms intercepted every one of his blows, and her jagged knuckles came a hair's breadth away from his vitals, no matter what kind of footwork or defensive flight maneuver he employed. Even worse, she shot down his constructs with bursts of chaos the moment he moved them. The cursed element fed on light, leaving nothing behind that Yoral could reassemble and use. A construct's main advantage was versatility and duration. While all other spells had a fixed form and an instant effect, a construct could change shape according to the situation and last until the mana that comprised it was exhausted. Chaos stripped the Lightmaster of all his advantages for no drawback, dragging him down to her level. There can't be body casting without a violet core. How can she keep up with my spells even when we clash? Also, she ignores all my feints and focuses solely on the real attack. Is this some dragon bloodline ability I'm unaware of? Joral wondered. The Shadow Dragon had no such bloodline ability, but the Skull of Bytra allowed her to read the flow of Joral's mana and anticipate the movement of his body and spells alike. The Maw of Bytra, instead, made up for her faulty core and cast spells for her while Zorith focused on the physical aspect of the fight. Chapter 426, Cleansing Ice, Part 1, The Storm. Griffin screeched in frustration and fury, releasing a wild burst of violet aura. Unwilling to give up on the enchantments of his equipment and his elemental spells, Yoral activated Fire Soul. A sea of fire engulfed the 2 divine beasts, eating at Zoreth's defensive layer of world energy and blinding the skull. The artifact tried and failed to read the chaotic energy flow and gave the Shadow Dragon a massive headache that even the Yggdrasil wood couldn't alleviate. "Now!" Yorl roared, bolting down on the Shadow Dragon with his mace raised like an angry god of war. "Thanks for the heads up." She turned off the skull and he drew a deep breath, hoping that her foggy head would clear in time to understand why the Storm Griffin had bothered warning her of the incoming attack. She released a burst of origin flames from all over her body, making sure they would ignore her protective layer and preserve their full strength to fight off Fire Soul. The hastily conjured corrupted flames were too thin to cover effectively an area that large, so Zoreth's origin flames made short work of them. Just like Jorl expected. He was still coming down in a straight line, but Fire Soul had already served its purpose, covering the approach of two Upirs attacking the Shadow Dragon from below in a pincer maneuver. "Oh shit!" Zoreth blocked Duskwraith again, and that was her second mistake. Yorl had already switched to Thunder Soul, and neither Skypiercer nor her defensive cocoon of world energy could protect her from it. The corrupted lightning fed upon Jorl's life maelstrom and slipped past Zoreth's battle gloves and her bookworm armor. The blows shattered Zoreth's arms from fingertips to shoulders, pulverizing every bone in between. The two Upirs conjured the Tier 5 spirit spell, Griffin Fetters, wrapping the Eldritch Dragon hybrid in emerald chains and locking her into place. "Please, no! Mercy!" Hearing those sweet words brought a wide smile to Yorl's beak and brought Orpal to stop his search for Rizel. Not because in anticipation of the fall of a powerful enemy, but because the tone of those words was wrong. There was no despair in Xenogrosh's voice as she laughed her plea. The Shadow Dragon grabbed the emerald chains with her allegedly shattered arms and pulled at them with unstoppable force. The two Upers combined their efforts, yet were unable to resist as she threw them at the Storm Griffin. Duskwraith struck the Upers, and Thunder Soul turned their internal organs into mush. The death of the two corrupted divine beasts dispelled the Griffin Fetter, and Zoreth bolted away, unwilling to waste more time with Jorl. She unfurled her wings and gave chase to her real prey, the dead king, while releasing a volley of small chaos spells from her hands. She couldn't afford to consume any more mana against Awakened, who might recover with a single breath, not before dealing with Orpal and his tower. There was no mana geyser below Luti, and the Verdalek's bloodline abilities limited her options further. With no way to replenish her mana cores, Xenogrosh knew that her superior strength was bound to fade if the fight lasted for too long. The Chaos Rain killed a few Upirs, but saved many Hydras and allowed them to kill more corrupted divine beasts. Its bullets along hard, opening deep holes in the Upir's flesh and sending stabs of pain that darkness fusion couldn't suppress. The Chaos element also devoured light fusion, slowing down the corrupted divine beast's recovery. Zoreth's Chaos Rain bought the members of the Awakened Council a precious moment of respite that they used to retreat and regroup. "Who in the nine hells are you?" The cursed bullets didn't spare Orpal, and their disruptive effect almost broke his focus and ruined his blade spell for good. The dead king had heard about Zoreth, but failed to recognize her in her new form. "She's the Shadow Dragon who almost killed me and forced my mother to intervene." Knight could never forget Xenogrosh's energy signature and shuddered at her sight. "Stall for time. She seems to have gotten stronger from the last time, and we need Shattered Moon to have a chance to kill her." The Shadow Dragon's reply came in the form of a burst of bright violet origin flames that Orpal countered with one of his own. The two flames met halfway through, their conflagration resulting in a small sun that lasted for a split second. From under the cover of light and smoke, Zoreth released 4 elemental pillars, one from each of her eyes. The light element took the form of a laser-like heat ray that struck moonlight from below, sending steed and rider spinning like a frenzied top. The darkness element crashed into Jorl, who rearranged his newly conjured constructs into a massive shield. He succeeded in resisting the attack, but the same couldn't be said about his light mastery spells. The hard light constructs crumbled, leaving him open to Xenogrosh's charge. The Shadow Dragon tackled the Storm Griffin with enough strength to knock the wind out of him and crack his ribs. The fire pillar struck Acton's back, interrupting his assault and creating an opening for Ra, Gu, and Fila to counterattack. From inside the sealed space, the human representative was free to use Invigoration and conjure elemental arrays, She took a deep breath to replenish her mana and unleash the power of several gravity magical formations across Lutia. She kept them small to save her energy, just wide enough to affect a divine beast's limbs. Ra'agu placed the gravity arrays on the Uper's feet, nailing them to the ground and allowing their enemies to press forward or retreat safely. Last but not least, the water pillar froze the Upers focused on ravaging Lutia and doused the flames across 4 city blocks. Many corrupted divine beasts turned their heads to the sky, afraid to be next. Fila exploited that brief moment of distraction to bolt amidst their ranks, hitting the careless Uper's vitals and injecting her spells from point-blank range. "That bitch," Orpal cursed. "I was this close to putting an end to this charade and slaughtering those old coots of the council. Even worse, how can she know light mastery? That's supposed to be an elusive branch of magic." "It is." Knight telepathically nodded. "The most likely explanation is her griffin ally and dragon eyes. What's really unbelievable is that Xenagrosh can use light mastery. She's an eldritch hybrid, and releasing so much light element should have killed her." "Dragon eyes." The dead king gritted his teeth in envy. Jorel had tried to teach Knight and Orpal light mastery, but they had failed to understand the first thing about it. Truth be told, the Storm Griffin had done a poor job on purpose, but they had no way of knowing it. Orpal had blamed their failure on the difficulty of the discipline, and Jorel had enthusiastically agreed with him. "Quit whining," Knight said. "We can't get dragon eyes, but light mastery is a different story. Once we assimilate Dawn, everything she knows will belong to us. We'll gain her experience of millennia and all her spells without spending a single second on more moldy books." The idea brought a smile to Orpal's face. Before we head to the next chapter, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the stories coming. Chapter 4, Year 27, Cleansing Ice, Part 2. "That's a matter for another day. I'm not leaving Lutia in defeat again." He needed a few moments to regain his focus and stabilize Shattered Moon. "We've come here for Rizel's family, and we're just one dead wench away from finishing our job." The blade spell's scattered mana gathered at the tip of his spear again, forming a luminous silver sphere as big as a house. Blood Desert, Starry Lagoon Village, at the same time. "Get out of the water and fight, you coward!" Tista screamed in frustration. The Jormungandr swam almost as fast as she flew, and exploited the protection of the ocean to force a stalemate. The Index swirling wind neutralized Philos's Frost Soul and allowed Tista to cast spells, but there wasn't much she could do as long as the Jormungandr kept several tons of water between them. Tista's best spells lost most of their destructive power and speed long before they reached Philos, allowing him to dodge everything she threw at him without wasting one drop of his mana. The female Index equipment worked, whereas the Upir's was dead weight due to the constant release of Frost Soul, but that meant nothing as long as he remained out of her reach. "I'm not vulnerable to cold in my evolved human form, but entering a Jormungandr's natural element would be beyond stupid," Tista thought. "I have no idea if I can keep Swirling Wind active without flapping my wings, and even if I could, I'd never be able to keep up with a sea serpent underwater. How much longer does the dead king still need?" Philos couldn't afford to emerge long enough to check on Neuron's fight, but the sudden disappearance of Fire Soul didn't bode well. "If I deactivate Frost Soul or run away, Verhen will get to Lutia and Orpal will kill me. Yet if Neuron dies and Verhen and his sister come at me together, I'm dead anyway." Each one of Tista's claw sweeps turned waves into steam and displaced hundreds of liters of water, but few forces on Mogar could split an ocean, and she wasn't among them. "What can I do? I'm open to suggestions," Tista asked via the mind link. She had tried and failed to pinpoint Philos's position with life vision, but her mystical senses were as blurred as her regular sight. Even her arrays rarely hit their target, and even when they did, the magical formations barely grazed the Jormungandr. "I've got no idea, sorry." Solus pushed a mana pulse from the watchtower, but it fell apart the moment it left the area of effect of Ryla's swirling wind. "I can't find him either, or I would have already blasted him away with a Silverwing's Annihilation." There was no point in consuming one of the few spells stored in the cannon vault without a proper target. "Seriously?" Tista conjured raging severance from her blue eye, and it froze the surface of the ocean for hundreds of meters, making the Jormungandr even harder to spot. "How did you and Lith deal with water enemies in the past?" "We didn't," Solus replied. Aside from the trip on the Wayfinder, we never had to face aquatic creatures. On top of that, back then, the whale thing attacked us head-on. It didn't waste our time playing tag. In other words, I'm screwed, Tista said. Yeah, sorry. Solus telepathically sighed. By my mom, if only either of us could use Derek. Neuron's death throes filled the air and cut her short. Never mind. Leith, use Derek. It should be super effective. At least say please, I'm not your battlemon. Lith dived down from the sky and did as bidden. I would have waited to get closer, though. I'm curious to see how the scattered cinder interacts with the corrupted water element. A barrage of small pillars of zero streaked the sky before hitting the water below with little to no effect. The air above, however, was a different story. Whenever Zero brushed against the Upir's corrupted life force, it would freeze it on the spot and spread through the rest of Frost's soul, forming a wide net of ice that cleansed the surrounding world energy of the corruption. Yes, I was right, Solus cheered as many audience stared at her in confusion. Now do that again, but this time aim near the tower. Emphasis on near. Good thinking. Lith nodded and conjured a second and thicker volley of Jerak. The Chore Magic Zero spells formed a path that connected the tower to the ocean, while also avoiding the merfolk and Lith's friends. The ice net expanded into a domed, colossal spiderweb that encompassed the village and broke Frost's soul's hold. The merfolk thawed at a discernible speed, and Morok noticed the disappearance of the blue sparks of corrupted life force that marked the boundaries of his swirling wind. The world energy now offered him no resistance, almost doubling the area of effect of his bloodline ability. Anyone can use magic now, the tyrant said. I don't know how long this will last, so be quick and bring the injured to safety. The merfolk trusted his words and conjured float spells to carry their friends to Lith's house 3 at a time. The Indec released a volley of small zero blasts, noticing that the frozen web kept expanding solely towards the ocean now. There were only a few sparks of corrupted life force left in the village, while Phylos kept emitting new ones. Jerak detected and hunted them down like a hungry wolf, each new ice tendril getting closer to the Jormungandr than the previous. What are those things? What is happening? Phylos moved fast, but Zero followed him as quickly as he released more frost soul. The corrupted life force attracted the cursed element that devoured it in an instant and turned it into more fuel for the chase. There, I can see the enemy now, Solus said, as the spreading net cleansed the world energy, allowing the watchtower to pinpoint the enemy's position. Can I kill him, or do I save the annihilation for later? Shoot him down and activate the defensive arrays at full power the moment his energy signature disappears, Lith replied. We can't waste any more time nor risk that another Ooper lying in ambush cripples you again. On it! A mere thought released the anti-guardian spell. The annihilation crossed the hundreds of meters separating the tower from its target in an instant. The Hepta elemental beam punctured a hole in the ocean, evaporating water, flesh, and bones alike in its wake. Phylos died without even knowing what had hit him, and with his life, Frost's soul also faded away. Any more enemies? Lith scoured the oasis with his Tiamat eyes but failed to spot anything. 1 second, Solus replied as the world energy flooded the tower and brought its enchantments back to life. Nothing. The watchtower can't find anyone except for us, the merchants, and the merfolk. I know we can't perceive Verdalek's blood until someone turns into an Upir, but I doubt Meln recruited insects and cacti for his army. Check our communication amulets, Lith said. We can't move until Grandma returns, but at least we can understand why Meln went to such lengths to keep us in the desert. No! The despair in Solus's mind struck Lith like a punch to the gut. Chapter 4-8, Traitor Blood, Part 1. No, please, no! Missed calls, messages, and news of the attack on the Griffin Kingdom flooded the communication amulets with a new ping for each notification. They are everywhere. Meln's everywhere. Nobody is safe. Yet none of that made Solus's heart tighten as the missing runes on both communication amulets. She yelled in despair, her thoughts churning in such a chaotic flow that Lith needed a partial mind fusion to make sense of her reaction. Fuck me sideways. There's not a moment to lose, he said. Call Grandma, Sinmara, and anyone we know who can take our place and keep our family safe after we leave for Lutia. I don't like leaving the tower behind, but only Grandma can replace it without blowing our cover. And if she's not the first to arrive, we can't afford to wait for her. Griffin Kingdom, City of Lutia, a few minutes ago. I don't know what you are, but one thing is certain. You are no dragon. With his violet core, Yorl was supposed to be just one step away from the full prowess of an elder griffin, the apex of the divine beast's physical might. Even with a bright violet monocore, Zorith shouldn't have been his match. Dragons possessed powerful magical abilities and were fearsome opponents at mid-range, yet their best weapons became dull in close-quarters combat. Dragon Eyes didn't work on martial technique, and their vaunted origin flames hurt a dragon as much as their opponent. Their claws were sharp and their scales thick, but their muscles were nowhere near as strong as a griffin's. The gap in Xenogrosh's and Yorl's mana core wasn't enough to bridge the gap in their raw strength, and the effects of life maelstrom coursing through both their bodies should have tilted the scales in the Storm Griffin's favor even further. Or at least, that was the theory. The Shadow Dragon's fists hit like hammers, and even in its battle glove form, Skypiercer punched through Jorl's adamant armor like paper. Her long tail lunged at him like a spear, and her neck whipped at his throat with frightening accuracy. If not for the Storm Dragon's superior speed, he would have lost the fight and with it his life in a matter of seconds. "I am a dragon, damned Finch!" Xenogrosh roared her challenge, daring Jorl to stop dancing around and fight. "But I'm also so much more. Here, let me show you." Yorl had expected her to dodge the assault of his twin maces, Duskwraith, yet the Shadow Dragon literally took them head-on. The first mace caved her skull while the second cracked her armor and broke her collarbone. It was just a feint to bait her into his real attack, but once Jorl noticed that she had no intention of dodging, he put his full weight into the blow. It was more than enough to kill even a bright violet-cored griffin, yet even after taking both blows in full, Xenogrosh's life force burned as strong as ever. She also put her full weight into her attack, distending her fingers and claws to their full length. The two divine beasts hit each other at the same moment, and Skypiercer's battle gloves reverted into blades that pierced the Storm Griffin's breastplate and came out of his back. Yet while the wounds of the Shadow Dragons healed so quickly that her head bounced Duskwraith back, the rivulets of blood streaking down the Storm Griffin's armor showed no sign of stopping. The chaos imbued in Xenogrosh's weapon now festered the gashes she had inflicted upon Jorl, neutralizing both light and darkness fusion. The Storm Griffin coughed up blood and flapped his wings to gain some distance, but the Shadow Dragon pressed on. "I've made the mistake of letting you go once. There won't be a second time." She took a deep breath, igniting a bright violet light in her chest. "If you so dearly wish to die before your dead king, I'll make it happen." "How is that possible?" Yorl kept flying back while releasing wave after wave of frost soul, yet the Shadow Dragon showed no sign of its effects. The ensuing blast of origin flames confirmed his worst fears and burned both his mana and body. "I need to get out of Lutia," Yorl thought as Xenogrosh renewed her charge against her weakened opponent. "I need to use invigoration and prepare new spells or—" The Shadow Dragon's battle claws broke past his guard, opening the way for her maw. Zorith bit into Jorl's neck, but didn't go deep. Orpal's blade spell, Shattered Moon, struck her from behind and vaporized her wings along with almost half of her body. The silver pillar of light blasted the Shadow Dragon out of the sky, sending her to crash outside Lutia on the opposite side of the Tron Woods. "There is no mana geyser here, but eldritches are hard to kill, and those hybrids are even harder," Knight pointed out. "Don't waste our energy on her. Focus on our mission." "Don't worry, I won't let our prey escape, not this time." Orpal nodded, moving the spear tip towards Lutia. Shattered Moon was akin to a searing eraser moving across a chalkboard, wiping out of existence everything it touched. It blasted through buildings and stone roads, digging a deep furrow along its path. It shattered Ragu's barrier and all the defensive spells she had placed around the Mage Association, stopping the momentum of the resistance and once again sealing the reinforcements. "Come out, Ryzel!" the Dead King yelled above the clangor of battle. "Come out now, and all of this bloodshed will end. How many more people have to die before you crawl out of your hole?" This time, his words reached a few confused Lucians, but they paid him no heed. Too focused on getting to safety to care about the ramblings of a madman. Only a few among the awakened of the council listened to Orpal's cries, but Rizel's name meant nothing to them. "Who's Rizel?" the head that Faluel used to hold Orpal's quarry asked, while also injecting plenty of nutrients inside his mother's body to save her flickering life. I am, he replied, fighting back the need to puke as the Hydra's quick movements put every roller coaster that had ever existed to shame. Faluel couldn't afford to move gently. Her remaining 6 heads were engaged against an Upir, in a furious battle for her life and those of the 2 humans she carried. The Hydras had come in numbers, but they had expected to face Orpal and a few of his corrupted divine beasts. Even with the help of the humans and the magical beasts of the Tron Woods, the Hydras were sorely unprepared to face over 100 Upirs, 2 real divine beasts, and a horseman with a mage tower. Orpal has come for me, Rizel half barfed and half raged. All this death, this misery, it's all my fault. I wish I could ask him what the hell he's talking about and have the time to listen to his answer. Faluel stepped back, avoiding a blow that would have crushed her coiled neck and the people it was supposed to protect. Chapter 4029, Traitor Blood, Part 2. The Upir in front of her had no qualms about targeting the defenseless humans, nor playing every dirty move in the book. Yet the worst part was that the corrupted divine beast who had stopped Faluel's retreat was also a Hydra. Melanor was older than Faluel, but the clan had excluded her from the Harmonizer project due to her lack of talent in both forge mastery and healing arts. It was also the reason she had betrayed her clan and sought Orpal's help. Melanor knew that even if the project succeeded, there was no guarantee that she would find her path to dragonhood before old age claimed her life. She didn't trust those who had already turned their back on her to help her, and she trusted her own skills even less. "How's the Harmonizer project going, Fanny?" the Hydra Upir said with a laugh. "I hope it's going well, because unless you can evolve right here and now, you won't live past today." "You're insane, Melly." Faluel's heads bobbed and weaved the Upir's attacks, staring at her former clanmate with a mix of disgust and envy. Melanor's body wasn't stumpy anymore. She had a fully formed torso, long arms, and longer legs. Melanor also had 2 membranous wings connecting her little fingers to high hips, and a bone spike-ending long tail that whipped the air in frenzy. On paper, it was the closest thing to the Hydra bloodline's dream after Ufil. In practice, however, Melanor's Upir form was a taint on everything the Hydra's quest for dragonhood stood for. Melanor's sea-green scales were gone, replaced by a thick black hide covered in short, needle-like bristles. Her eyes, all 14 of them, now shone with the red light of undeath instead of the power of the elements. There was no wisdom in her features, nor nobility in her poise. Melanor's appearance wasn't that of a cunning, mighty dragon, but of a bloodthirsty predator, and the only thing that the members of the Hydra clan felt while looking at her was revulsion. The monochores and spells of the 2 Hydras were evenly matched, and so was their mastery over the art of domination. Yet Orpal's blood had given Melanor a physical prowess and mass that eclipsed Faluel's. That and Melanor's Upir bloodline abilities put Faluel at a disadvantage that she couldn't bridge, no matter how hard she tried. The frost soul of the other Upirs blocked her elemental spells, while Melanor's thunder soul bypassed Faluel's adamant armor, inflicting deep wounds upon her. Faluel had managed to survive that long only thanks to her multiple heads. Whenever a Hydra was injured, it was easy for them to use invigoration even in the heat of battle and recover from injuries that would have otherwise sealed their fate. Alas, it was a game that Melanor could play as well, making Faluel's cunning and tactics irrelevant. Faluel's situation would have been desperate as it was, but protecting the 2 humans made it hopeless. She had 1 head less than her opponent due to the sheer focus that protecting Rizel and his mother required. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome, Fanny, Melanor hissed, clawing at the smaller Hydra. How many experiments has the clan performed so far? How many times do you so-called geniuses have to fail before giving up? There is no path to dragonhood. Ligain has forsaken us as a failed experiment, yet we can still become divine beasts. Just look at me. All I see is a raving monster. Faluel unleashed a burst of phoenix smash that Melanor countered with a mirror wall. I'd rather spend the rest of my life as a Hydra than become like you. The spirit barrier crumbled under the emerald flames, but what was left barely blackened the Upir's armor. You mean the next 30 seconds? Sickly yellow electricity arched across Melanor's body as she rushed forward. Due to their lack of prehensile limbs, hydras rarely used weapons. That and her status as a runaway left the Upir with only her lesser divine beast-sized armor, rings, and amulets as equipment. That sounds like an accurate estimate. Faluel suddenly shapeshifted into a draconic form that strikingly resembled Ufil's, missing only the wings. For you, though. The moment Life Vision confirmed that Faluel had escaped Frost Soul's boundaries, the blades on her short fingers and toes joined together in her hands to form her enchanted glaive, Strife. Faluel planted the heel of the still extending staff in the ground, impaling Melanor before she could stop her mad charge. How? Faluel twisted the blade as she pulled it out, leaving a gaping hole where Melanor's heart was supposed to be. Then she swung Strife in a wide arc, cutting off all of Melanor's 7 necks in a single fluid movement. The heat emitted by the blade instantly cauterized the stumps, sealing the Upir's final breath and any possible use of invigoration. I forge. Master my own weapons and don't go around advertising them. That's how, you filthy traitor, Faluel thought while using one of her heads to scout her retreat path and the other 6 to look around. What she witnessed made her cold blood run even colder. Faluel's victory was a glimmer of hope in a sea of despair. Not many hydras could afford an enchanted weapon of their size, and even those who did only fared a bit better than the others. Frost Soul nullified all enchantments, and the bigger size of the Upirs negated most, if not all, of the range advantage of the weapons. The gap mass, instead, was something that no piece of enchanted metal could even out. When an Upir managed to grab the haft of a polearm or picked up a lost weapon, their opponent had little chance of victory, and a tactical retreat became the only option. I would have probably ended up the same way if I didn't keep Strife a secret and bait Melanor into such a reckless charge. Faluel panted, stepping back to get further away from Frost Soul's corrupted water element. If Lotho doesn't arrive soon, we'll be annihilated. Where in the gods' names is Lotho? Ra'agu shared Faluel's worry, but her perspective was much more frantic. Shattered Moon had crushed all the magical formations she had carefully overlapped, flooding the Mage Association branch with Frost Soul and turning the Warp Gate into a useless pile of rocks again. Her regular use of invigoration had kept Ra'agu at the peak of her strength, but that was a small consolation when facing a 30 meters 100 tall Upir Bastet in close combat. Acton had reached the bright violet core long before meeting Orpal, and had kept the relationship with his family decent enough to have one of their best forge masters to craft his equipment a little over 50 years ago. Sure, he couldn't use any spell or enchantment aside from the spirit ones like everyone else, but Thunder Soul was unaffected by his frost twin, and so was the life Maelstrom Jorel had bestowed upon the Bastet. Many hydras had already fallen to Acthon's spear, Ashen Dread, and Ra'agu was bound to join their ranks unless she abandoned her position, and with it any hope to save Lutia. Chapter 40-30, Verdant Host, Part 1. You have fought well for a human, but that's not enough. The Bastet lunged a flurry of attacks at the spirit barrier that Ra'agu had hastily erected, each strike delivering a spark of Thunder Soul to one of the array's focus points and tearing it apart. Sometimes, surrender is not cowardice, woman, it's wisdom. Acton consumed little strength while hitting a fixed target, whereas the human representative consumed a lot of mana to keep the magical formation from crumbling. There's no honor in a pointless death. There's no honor in following a madman either. Fila finally defeated her last opponent and rushed to help Ra'agu. I don't know who you are, but I'm sure the Bastet bloodline won't let this slide. Her battle claws sparked with emerald energy as she charged them with a spell, ready to be unleashed the moment their blades slipped past Acton's guard. Oh, please! The Bastet turned his body so that the tip of his spear pointed at the behemoth and the heel of the haft at the human barrier. It's been centuries since my clan deigned to move a finger. Many times I have tried to rally my fellow Bastets to action, yet they stood there while foolish humans and petty tyrants turned our own continent, our very birthplace, into a waking nightmare. What makes you think they will care about your continent more? Acton snarled, unleashing a barrage of furious attacks on the Garland representatives. Fila could barely keep up with him, her breath ragged and heavy from the prolonged fight. Even with Fearwall's life maelstrom boosting her griffin prowess, Fila blocked more often than she liked and failed to advance more than a couple of steps. Ashen Dread's superior range allowed Acton to keep the behemoth at bay, too far away for any of her deadly combinations of attack to matter. Every glancing blow carried a spark of Thunder Soul inside her body, tearing up muscles and cracking bones faster than life fusion could mend. Ragu's barrier suffered only return blows from the heel of the spear, and Acton couldn't aim at the focal points anymore, but he had no need to. I'm getting weaker by the second, and my Diamond Fortress array was already close to crumbling by the time Fila came to my rescue. Ragu panted. If I help her, my magical formation will fall apart, and the Bastet will kill me. If I don't, I'll hold on for a few more seconds. He'll kill Fila, and then it will be my turn. I'm spoilt for choice. The human representative looked around Lutia. But fire, smoke, and frost soul clouded her mystical and physical sight alike. She still had enough mana to spirit blink to Fila's side and warp them both to safety. Ragu still could make it out of that impossible situation alive, if only she found a retreat path. Screw this! Finding none, Ragu blinked behind Fila's back and used what mana she had left to conjure a set of griffin fetters, restraining the Bastet's limbs. There was no time for a mind link, yet Fila knew what to do. She could see with life vision that Ragu's magical strength was all but spent and didn't miss the fleeting opening in Acton's guard. The Bastet noticed it as well and used it to lure the behemoth into a trap. As soon as Fila put her full weight into her attack, Acton spun Ashen Dread. Its life maelstrom-infused adamant tip and thunder soul respectively cut through the emerald chains and disrupted Raagu's spell matrix. The griffin fetters broke down in a thin mist before Fila could even cross the distance with the Bastet and left her exposed to his counter. The spear tip pierced through Fila's breastplate and hide, releasing the thunder soul straight into her lungs. Darkness fusion suppressed the pain from a wounded heart while Ragu healed the behemoth, but no spell could make up for the lack of oxygen. Fila's knees gave out, her fall delivering Ashen Dread even closer to her heart. She clung to the haft of the spear with one clawed hand and attacked it with her other battle claw, preferring to lose one of her last few spells rather than her life. Acton twisted and pulled Ashen Dread out of the behemoth's body before her attack could come close, but after she had unleashed the spirit spell, it held. Blood and mana filled the air as Acton raised his spear for his final lunge, and Fila found herself unable to move. You waited too long to make the right choice, and now it makes no difference, human, the Bastet said. Just like my people. Ragu gambled everything on a breath of invigoration that covered her lungs in frost and sent her into a coughing spasm. Sorry for being late. The words resounded after a loud thump to the back of Acton's head sent him crashing down. There are many more Upirs than we expected, so it took me longer than we planned. Lotho had sapped the nutrients from Lutia's fertile ground, growing in size until he matched a divine beast. He elongated his arms and turned his fists into spiked maces that he used to beat the Bastet's more sensitive spots with the rhythm of a frenzied drummer. The treant attacked Acton's nose, ears, temples, toes, and chest at the same time after coating his extra limbs with the adamant of his armor. The Bastet rolled on the ground to escape the pummeling, but the tree branches just grew further. He split Ashen Dread in half and used the short staffs to block 2 attacks each, but the other 6 still reached their mark. Lotho had no life maelstrom to empower him, so he had to make up for quality with quantity. Several limbs sprouted all over his wooden body and were reabsorbed as soon as they no longer served their purpose. Fae like Lotho didn't waste enchanted metal on weapons, and poured all their resources on the thickest and heaviest armor they could afford. It allowed a Fae to alter their mass at will and shapeshift their arms into any kind of weapon they might need. Acton roared in outrage, biting his inner cheek to resist the impulse to breathe origin flames at the pesky Fae. Lotho roared back, his voice sounding like the creaking of tree branches during a storm. He kept his distance, uncaring of how many limbs the frenzied Bastet cut down. New ones sprouted from the stumps, while the old ones were quickly reabsorbed and ready to use. At the same time, the plant representative opened a spirit steps that warped Fila and Ragu high in the sky. The human representative breathed the pure world energy avidly, sharing the effects of invigoration with the wounded behemoth. If he weren't that late, I could have kissed that old lump of coal, Fila said while feeling her strength return. Same. Ragu watched the reinforcements the treant had brought with him swarm Lutia and tilt the scales of battle. A small army of what looked like treantlings marched from the Tron woods, battering the Oopers on their path like rams and rescuing humans and hydras. Verdant Host was one of the Treant's most powerful abilities, but one they never employed lightly. In chapters 40:21 to 40:30 of Supreme Magus, the story intensifies as tensions that have been building finally explode into open confrontation. With the gloves off, restraint disappears, and characters are forced to reveal their true intentions. What once felt like political maneuvering and hidden schemes now turns into direct conflict. The Snake in the Grass arc exposes deception at its core. Betrayal doesn't come from distant enemies, but from those operating in the shadows. Trust becomes fragile, and every alliance feels uncertain. The emotional weight of suspicion adds just as much pressure as the battles themselves. Then, in 5 minutes, urgency takes control. Every second matters, and decisions made in the heat of the moment carry irreversible consequences. The pacing tightens, highlighting how fragile stability truly is in this world. Cleansing Ice brings a colder, sharper tone. It symbolizes purification but also pain. Characters are forced to confront uncomfortable truths, and the cost of loyalty becomes clearer than ever. By the time we reach Traitor Blood and Verdant Host, betrayal transforms into revelation. Blood ties, hidden motives, and shifting power structures reshape the battlefield. Yet even amid treachery, the hint of renewal appears, suggesting that growth often rises from conflict. These chapters mark a turning point. The story moves from suspicion to exposure, and from exposure toward transformation. Nothing remains hidden for long, and the consequences are only beginning to unfold. If you enjoyed this narration and analysis of chapters 40:21 to 40:30 of Supreme Magus, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments on who you think will rise or fall next.